I want to talk to you about specifically the impact of the NCAA's change on female athletes. In years leading up to the change, people thought that a change in NIL would only benefit the top revenue sports at schools, so football and basketball. But really what we've seen is that at sports like women's gymnastics has been doing really, really well. We've got a lot of athletes doing well there. So can you talk about what your experience, what you've seen on in terms of female athletes and their experiences with NIL since the change?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to, what we were talking about earlier, that not just this generation has figured out how to be really good at social media, but I think women are very good storytellers. They often are putting a lot of their personal lives, whether it's fashion or cooking or, anything that they're really interested in on social media, not just a sport that they're playing. And I think that has grabbed the attention of brands very quickly. So a lot of these athletes, the Cavender twins, Livy Dunn, a number of people were, TikTok, Instagram stars before NIL even started. And I think Livy Dunn, gymnastics athlete, I think she's the highest paid collegiate athlete and the only number 3. Okay. I think maybe Bronny James is the number 1. I mean, we know why he would be the number 1, of course. But yeah, I mean, it's just so interesting that if you remove football, I think it's like 3 of the top 5 grossing sports are women's sports. Women's basketball, gymnastics, volleyball is on that list. So that, I think, has been really impactful. And it's not really a surprise to us at Wasserman because we've been preaching this for a very long time through our group, The Collective, in terms of brands need to spend on sports. Women as consumers of sports is, they're at the very top, not just of women's sports, but of men's sports is as well. And if we just advertise women's sports, a lot of fans will come in. And so that's not something that's necessarily been a surprise to us to see, but it's nice that everybody else is now recognizing it. I mean, if you look at all of the brands that were involved in just the Final Four weekend, I think there were, last year, 20 advertisers for the women's Final Four. This year, 100 advertisers for the women's Final Four, plus brands upon brands upon brands just activating at the site. And you have brands like Buick with their, what was the name of their campaign? I can't remember the name of their campaign, but it was like a big one where they had Cam Brink and Aaliyah Boston, just major brands investing, I think is, going to keep pushing dollars into women's sports.
I read somewhere that viewership of the collegiate tournament in basketball was higher actually this year, that some analysts are attributing to the fact, and this made me so proud. I looked up some stats, which was not what made me proud. What made me proud was that female collegiate basketball players got way more NIL deals than the male collegiate basketball players. And I was like, yes, go women. So they, some analysts are attributing the higher viewership just to the fact that these female basketball players are just have just been working their NIL deals and have sponsorship and are really proving it up to the brands.
Right. And I think there's been more access. You can watch the sports more than you could 5 years ago. So that, I think, has drawn the fan base and increased the Instagram and TikTok followers. And that's the number one thing that brands care about, not just for NIL athletes, but for professional athletes too. When we're doing our data and analytics about why ex-professional athletes should work with this brand, they care about the social media. And it's the same thing for NIL. So I think it's just going to get better and better. I mean, I don't know that women's sports are going to be number 1 when football is getting the most revenue. I mean, that would be great if we could have women's basketball or gymnastics sort of take over that spot. But I think it's just going to continue to be elevated.